Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of this theme series about creating your marketing strategy. On this episode, we are going to talk about how to define your target. So stick around. Hey, I'm not your marketer, Alberto Limpira. Welcome to this second episode where we are going to discuss about the target audience. Thank you for joining. So, one of the first steps for defining your target audience, who are you going to market your product or services, is to follow the SMART rule for goal setting. So, you have to think about goals that are specific, measurables, actionable, relevant, and time bound. Specific so that you can go into detail that and sufficient information that you can pinpoint problems or opportunities. Measurable, this is obviously something that is self-explanatory, something that you can be able to quantify. Actionable is something that is actually a thing that you can trigger by some other actions. Relevant because they have to add some sort of value to your whole strategy. And time bound, you have to set up a deadline for everything that you have defined on your marketing strategy. So this is important. It's crucial to know your specific and your right target audience because it can help you to specify your activities, your marketing activities, because what you're going to do is that you are going to create and tailor all the actions so that you can be as close as possible to that target audience. It can also help you to streamline your strategy or your marketing plan because you're going to only focus on the things that are going to get you closer and grab the attention of that target audience. So, a target audience must be always well defined. You have to understand, you can define your target audience by many different ways. You can just think about the age, lifestyles, values, demographics, where are they located, and so on. Okay. And also, they must be identifiable. So, you have to be able to understand where they are, what are they doing, why are they doing the things they do. Because that way you're going to understand a little bit more about the behavior, which is some key information that you can use to develop your buyer persona, which is something that we are going to discuss a little bit later. So it doesn't matter if you are a B2C or a B2B kind of business, business to consumer or business to business, because you are always going to be able to choose and to define your target audience, no matter your services or products. So for a B2C, usually you should focus on how you can add value to the customer and understand how you can affect and impact their lives. Whether with a B2B, you have to also understand who is the prescriber of the purchase. We're going to think about one example. If you're a B2C, probably your product or service is going to be purchased by the end user, by the consumer that is going to actually use your product or service. So let's say that is Netflix. So Netflix memberships or subscriptions are oftentimes purchased by someone that is going to actually use the service. Whether when you are on a B2B business, let's say that you are selling customer relationship management software for companies, someone in the sales department can be the one prescribing the purchase. Suggesting to the internal team that they could, purchase your product or purchase a new product that can solve their problems. But he or she is not going to be the one actually making or completing the purchase. So moving forward, I mean, when you have to understand your customer, there are six things that you can do, or six steps that you can consider in order to get the consumer insight. So, an insight is the hidden truth behind the customer. It doesn't matter if it's a B2B or if it's a B2B, because in the case of B2Bs, what you're going to have is that someone who is oftentimes the one responsible or the one having the problem is going to be the one giving you the insight, and it's going to take the problem or raise the issue or the problem to the managers or to the decision makers inside the company. So the first step should be that you have to find the trigger, the moments in the customer journey to focus on them. So you have to understand what and on which or in which points in the customer journey your customer is at. And then on the second step, you have to use in-depth research to explore the consumer triggers. So depending on your product, depending on your service, depending on the stage and the consumer journey where your customer is, yeah, they can be thinking about different things, and there may be different triggers to action the purchase intent. The third step should be to capture all the customer hints and identify common themes. That is, that if you find a specific route that has been followed by more than one potential customers, probably that is going to be setting a rule that you can use to create like a model to understand the path that some other customers may also follow. The fourth step should be to select an insight based on its power and the value to the company. So let's say that you have found a really valuable insight from a potential customer. What you have to do is to actually understand if that insight is adding more information and more data that can help the company to leverage on that to develop either new products or service offerings or to improve the one that they have already been going on. The fifth step should be to make the consumer attention comes to life. Make sure that you have attract the customer to you and to make them aware that you exist and that you can be useful for them. And the final step, the sixth step, is you have to go deeper into motivations and emotions. Nowadays, it's ever more frequent for a lot of companies that are focusing on emotions rather than on rational abilities things when they want to attract the customer. That is because a lot of people are just following what they feel. I mean, we are human after all, right? And companies and brands has understood that this is a easier and a path to the customer mind, and it's an easier way to make them loyal. So after you have some insights from your customer, it's going to be much easier to understand and to use that information to create your buyer personas. So let's think here about an example. Let's think about the customer insights for three different car manufacturers, for high-end car manufacturers. So we have Mercedes Benz, we have BMW, and we have Audi. So all three of them are German car makers, um, on the high end or luxury spectrum of the industry. So depending on the insight of the customer, they are going to be appealing. I mean, each of these companies, each of these brands, they are going to be appealing to a different target, a different segment of users or customers into those targets. So we could argue that probably, I don't know, maybe people more interested in like sport driving and all the stuff could go to BMW, whether Mercedes is kind of the gold standard for luxury and comfortability. I mean, this is something that you can argue, but this is just to give you an example of how three companies or three brands that are in the same industry targeting, you may say, the same group of people is actually, or they are actually more different depending on the inside of the customer, which is something that remember what I told you is the hidden truth of the customer. So, moving forward, when you are going to identify the customer inside, you have to think about the problems that they have, the needs, the concerns, the interest, the emotions linked to the purchase, and the belief and behaviors. All of these things or all of these elements combined, I'm going to repeat that because this is really important. There are six of them. So the first one is a problem that the customer has, the second one is the needs, third, concerns, fourth, the interest, five, the emotions linked to the purchase, and six, the beliefs and behaviors. Because those are the elements that are going to help you to shape the form, the way of thinking of your potential customer. And when you are identifying the customer insights, you're going to discover the way the customer perceive and conceive himself or herself. You're going to be looking at the market as the consumer looks at it and perceives it. You're going to be understanding the psychology of the consumption, and if there is any symbolic role that has for the customer. So in the case of this example that we were talking about, BMW, Audi, and Mercedes Benz, probably there's something more symbolic to the purchase of one of those products from each of those brands, rather than just more rational, right? So then you have to be doing some research. You're going to be observing and listening and exploring the field. The insight doesn't appear easily. You have to work hard to find it. Okay. Um, Oftentimes, you're going to use a lot of intuition as well. And the customer insight has both. It's a mix of truth, intuition, and fantasy. Because at the end of the day, an insight as the hidden truth of a customer could lead to a very deep, deep desire on the customer. Okay. So if you think about some other companies, you may have, I don't know, you can have Sephora, Allspice, and Apple. They have total different insights. So in the case of Sephora, you may argue that it has something to do with empowering, feeling empowered, feeling good with yourself, with all the product offering that they have. Whether with Allspice, what they aim to is for to give you or to give the customer a more is not self-esteem but self-confidence through the fragrances, through, I don't know, empowering or feeling empowered just by the products that you use. And obviously Apple is always tailoring to empowering people. So you have three different examples of how empowering could be the common ground for these three companies or these three brands, but they are tailored to different segments in a very different way to each of those segments for the target audience. Okay. So, with all this, what you are going to finally do is to create your buyer persona, customer persona, avatar, you name it as you want. These are fictitious representations of your ideal buyer. So there are um, mixed opinions on if you should use a buyer persona. I am one of the ones that defend the use of buyer personas because it can help you to understand and to put yourself in the shoes of your potential customer. And when you are moving forward into creating your marketing actions, it's going to be way more easy. It's going to be easier for you to create actions that are going to be a good fit for each one of them. So they are based on real demographic data of the persons that have the buying behavior for your product or service. You can do a fair amount of speculations about the education, the personal stories, the motivations, and some of the concerns. But you should be really close to what you have found during the research that you have conducted on a first place. So, how to create a buyer persona? I mean, if you can use four steps for that, the first one could be from your own expectations. Start from your own expectations, then use the segmentation data that you have gathered with the research. You can use some surveys to gather more information to understand a little bit more could be interested in your product or services. And then you can do some observations. I mean, who is the people purchasing the product from you or from your competitor? How do they look like? Okay, so after this, you have to well, just define the way to present your buyer persona. You can add as many details as you wish. For me, the more detailed it is, the more powerful it's going to be. So you can have some background information like details about the person's role, key information about their lifestyle, the background, such as the education, hobbies, what do they like, the lifestyle, so forth. Then you can have, I mean, you should add also the demographic data like gender, age range, estimated revenue if that's relevant for you. Does it live in an urban area or a rural or I don't know, like in the outside of main cities or metropolitan areas? Also, you can add some objective and personal challenges, especially as marketing is moving forward and it's more dependable right now on the values of the customers. That way, you're going to see and understand if they care about some specific things, so that you can use that to your advantage. This is something that companies like Ben and Jerry's have been doing so I mean, really good by talking the same language and I mean, and sharing content about the same issues that their customers are interested in. Okay, so um, then you can also do this for creating the buyer company, which would be, I mean, instead of just having the persona, getting the idea of the ideal, I mean, yeah, to get the picture of the ideal company that would be your customer. And you have to follow the same path. The only thing is that probably it's going to be easier for you to define the buyer company. What is going to be more difficult for a B2B is going to identify who should you target to. Sometimes you don't target the right away the decision makers. You're going to try to find out who can prescribe the purchase, as I mentioned before, because sometimes the prescription, I mean, going through a prescriber is going to be a way of less friction for a new product or service to enter to a company in the B2B business. And after this, the next step, I mean, you have all your target defined. You're going to think about the segmentation and the positioning of the company. And this is what we are going to talk about on the next episode, on the third episode of this theme series. So thank you for joining me. Please let me know if you have questions. If there's anything that you don't quite get or don't quite understand about these issues. This is one of the things that I teach at the business school. And I also teach that for my undergrad students. So I'm more than happy to share this knowledge with you and to help you to understand a little bit more. So we're going to be back next week with just the latest news and trends in marketing, business, and tech. And 2 weeks from now, we're going to have the third episode of this theme series. I have changed the way I record these episodes. I'm trying to record them live as they happen. So If there are more, I don't know, like mistakes or anything going on, please be aware that I'm reducing the editing to the bare minimum because of um, reasons of time, because I don't have enough time to do all the editing, and I still want to deliver the content that I have promised to deliver. So feel free to send me your feedback, send me emails. You can contact me on social media. Please be safe. Take care. Thank you for joining me again. Subscribe, please, if you like this, either on YouTube or your favorite podcast provider. And see you next week. Lempi out.